So, as I was saying, there will be a kind of a discussion in the beginning of the class, right? So some of you have to make sharing. If you have any question, you can raise. And also if you have a certain understanding or remark to make, you can do so. Close to the sound is coming from outside. But I realize that, probably I cannot ask everyone to provide your sharing. Okay, so probably I'll be asking some of you to do the sharing, and the remaining people will be sharing probably in the following classes. Okay, so that is how it will go. But in any case, everyone has to participate in sharing. So this is part of the course. Why this is not functioning? It's not working. I don't know why. What happened? Okay, so yes, the topic of our discussion last week was origin and development of Abhidhamma literature, right? And we have been talking about basically two theories. One is traditional one, the other is historical account, but we did not really go into the historical account yet, right? We have been just talking about the traditional understanding of how the Theravada Abhidhamma literature originated and developed. Whether it is in terms of just, yes, I'm not still sharing it because we'll be focusing on discussion first. So probably if anyone is willing to share, you can share your thoughts on our previous discussion. Otherwise, I have to go by names. Did you collect these two texts that I mentioned in the last class? The two texts that would be the basis for our course. Do you all have these two texts? I don't get any response from the online students. I'm sure all of you have got these two texts as well. What about Venerable Kemar? Do you have these two texts?
Yes, I already have.
One is a comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma, edited by Bhikkhu Bodhi, right? Originally translated by Narada Thera, actually. Yeah. And the other is Theravada Abhidhamma by Professor Y. Karunadasa. Did you get this text as well?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
I also have the original book, not translated. This one is by Narada Thera.
Narada Thera?
Yeah, the original one.
The edited text or
not
one? There is no translation?
Yes, it's translation.
Yes, so that is probably the earlier version. Later on, Bhikkhu Bodhi edited it later.
Yes.
Yeah. So, any thoughts on the previous lecture? Probably Venerable Indaka can start sharing. Mm.
A collection of all the fire. I think it's and Mahatma Sudha. So there was the discussion between the Buddhas and the other Lama, Swami Buddha and others. So when the Swami Buddha had to express their idea, apology, not apology, just in the answer from the Swami Buddha, he said that amounts to and meanings of the Buddha. So that the set kind of amounts with the law. This statement a lot. I'm not very sure if for the word of and another thing, another passages in the including that is about the humor or between comes a humor of like naughty before between. When you listen that way, I cannot say I want to teach you and avoid the direct answer. I can say I know you are also to learn and Sudan. You can Abhidharma. How we find that the word and these are the two places that I have found the apart from
Yes. That is from a Bhikkhu Buddhist introduction to this manual, right? I see. But this comes under the discussion of how do you say, academic approach to the origin and development of Abhidhamma, because there, these scholars, they're trying to find out the similarity in terms of structure, in terms of contents, in terms of discussions, right? So these scholars, they're trying to find the basis in the suttas, right? The presentational style of a certain suttas in Abhidhammic way, and then they're trying to connect this with the suttas or some part of Vinaya presentation with Abhidhamma development. But in our last class, we did not really touch on this aspect, right? We have been focusing on the traditional account primarily. So there are few points and few questions that were raised. For example, there is one opinion that says between second to third council, the Abhidhamma literature was developed. What do you think would be the reason? Okay. Venerable Asin Kemar wants to say something.
Yes, I think not. It's not. I have read something on the book. It is my suppose, my belief. I think at that time, so many like the Buddhist sects have so many different Buddhist traditions they spread. So that's why, and at that time, so the Buddhist theory and thought so it's different. Cause of that, I think is they are have like comparisons on each other group. That's why.
Yeah, I think you have pointed out something that is a topic of discussion as well, that there was some, how do you say, it is not exactly confusion, but there was some efforts in trying to explain and understand the teachings of the Buddha, right? So there were different group of monks, different group of followers of the teachings of the Buddha that have been trying to understand the teachings contained within the Sutta and Vinaya, and then they're trying to explain it in a philosophical manner, because it was a time when there was a lot of debates and discussions going on, right? So between the Buddhist schools, or sometimes between Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools as well, right? So it seems like it was a time when all these philosophical system of thought have been developing, right? So some of these groups of monks who are not just intellectually exercising the teachings of the Buddha, but I believe that they themselves have been practitioners, serious practitioners as well. Otherwise, there is a possibility of mispresenting the teachings of the Buddha, and I'm sure that they will not try to do that. You see, because if you are sincerely following the teachings of the Buddha, or following the path laid down by the Buddha, there is this idea that if you explain, if you present the teachings of the Buddha wrongly, you accumulate demerits, right? So it is a harm for yourself, because you are going away from the actual path, right? In the time of the Buddha also it happened in several cases. Especially, I don't remember the name of this monk. What is his name? He was ordained into this Sangha, and he was not able to understand the teachings of the Buddha. And after some time, he got fed up with the practice, with the disciplinary rules and everything. And then when he was still actually a monk, he has been going to different places in different villages, saying that Buddha really does not have enough wisdom. He does not show any psychic power or anything, right? He just talk about suffering and cessation of suffering that everybody knows, right? So this is just a very simple and basic teaching. He is not an extraordinary teacher or whatever. So do not follow him, right? So, and when the Buddha came to know about it, the Buddha is saying to his other disciples that sometimes out of ignorance people do that, but when actually how do you say spreading rumor about the Buddha and his teaching, he is actually praising the Buddha when he says that Buddha just talk about dukkha and its cessation and so on. Even though he does not understand, that is what I teach, that is truth, right? But he is not able to grasp it. That is a different matter. Probably it is in the Alaguddupama Sutta. There was a monk who was having a different type of view, and his friends are trying to explain it to him that the Buddha did not teach it in this way, but he's not able to accept it. And later on, Buddha called him, and then Buddha was explaining him again the teaching, the true teaching, but still he's not able to understand it. And then the Buddha directed or shifted his attention to other students, saying that those who are not able to understand, they are not going to be able to understand. So do not waste time with them, because their karmas, their karmic force is not ripened yet. So, because in any case, they are not going to understand it, right? So there will be a time when probably he would realize his mistake, and then he would understand. But anyway, what Venerable Kama pointed out is right. In that period between second to third council, there was this movement of explaining or defining, redefining the teachings of the Buddha, and also probably teachings of other schools. So therefore, there have been going on a kind of debate and discussions, out of which this Abhidhamma literature developed. So this is one important point.
From the first council to the second council, but in the second council, the Sangini was replaced because of the points.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't really see like in that council, we don't really see a huge difference on the perspective on the teachings of the Buddha. It's not like because of the different views from the
True.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we have these documents, and we have to. We have just these documents before us, and then when you go through them, you have a certain understanding. That's all. But personally, if you ask me, if it says when it says that based on this ill utterance of Venerable Subhadda, that this first council was held, right? Because Subhadda is saying that it is good that the Buddha passed away, otherwise he would be always pointing out our mistakes, right? And he would say that do this, do not do that, right? Now we can do whatever we like to do. So do not cry, do not lament. That was his remark, as you can find in the record of first council in Mahavamsa, Dipavamsa, or Samanta Pasadika, Mahaparinibbana Sutta, wherever this account is mentioned. But that is taken as a kind of reasoning behind holding this council, but I don't think that is the only reason. You see, that could not be entirely the reason. Why? Because in the time of the Buddha, now in this case, in the commentary to these discussions, you would find that the reason behind Subhadda's, becoming upset with the Buddha is, or his making of this kind of remark is that previously somehow he was not happy with the Buddha, right? He joined as a monk, and then when Buddha together with his other disciples went to this place where Subhadda has been living, Subhadda's village probably, and he instructed his children to prepare food for the Buddha and everyone, and he has been working there as well as a monk, which he's not supposed to do, and he did not inform it to the Buddha previously, right? So when the Buddha went for alms round, he stopped and he said that, I have been preparing food for you last entire night and so on. I invite you to come and take meal. But the Buddha rejected. Buddha said that I'm going for alms round, and you did not invite me before. Suddenly I cannot just go and take your food and so on. So because of that, Subhadra was not happy, and later on he made this kind of remark. So that is the explanation provided. But now, if you look at the life of the Buddha, you would find that Devadatta, for example, has been doing everything to become a leader in the Sangha, right? So he was trying to split the Sangha. He was proposing so many things. He went so far as to kill the Buddha also. But there was no occasion of, calling all the students, all the disciples together and recite the teaching. You see? And then again, when especially this Mahavira, Jaina leader, passed away, when it was informed to the Buddha, what was the Buddha's reply? He did not even move by that. When a certain student came to the Buddha saying that Jaina leader Mahavira passed away, and in his Sangha now, there is a lot of conflict and trouble going on among his disciples, monastic disciples as well as lay disciples, with regard to his teachings, disciplinary rules, and everything. Right? Who could be the leader? It is like who could be president, who could be secretary, who could be, I don't know, whatever post they are trying to have. So the Buddha said that rather than just focusing on this particular incident and taking the decision of calling the monks and reciting the teaching together, what he said is that what could be the reason that in a particular community there are conflict? What could be the reasons behind it? Why people, engage in conflict in a religious organization, right? In a Sangha. Then the Buddha said that if the teaching is not well proclaimed, if the teacher is not really awakened, right? And if the students who are following are not sincerely actually understanding the teaching, then there is a problem of this conflict, right? So he did not bother to say that, oh, okay, so I have to be concerned about it. Now I should call all my senior disciples and ask them to recite my important teaching so that they can remember and teach them to others. But since some of his students have been pursuing him, what he said is, you can remember this 37 factors of enlightenment, Bodhipakkya. So in a way, in my opinion, that could be regarded as a kind of, small council, right? Because some of his students recited this. That could be taken as a kind of a basis for the entire teachings of the Buddha. 37 factors of enlightenment. And this has been mentioned in several places. In Mahaparinibbana Sutta, right? And in this few suttas, I think it is Pasadika Sutta probably. I'm not sure. Sorry? Yeah. So, but his focus was not this. If you look at the sutta, the entire focus was what could be the reason behind arising of this conflict, and how do you solve this conflict if such a conflict arises. That was the focus. Okay. And then if you look at the Sanghiti Sutta and Dasuttara Sutta of Digha Nikaya, these two suttas present a kind of listing of topics. So as long as listing of topics is concerned, if you take them as matikas, as a basis for the development of Abhidhamma, they can be, considered as the basis, right? And also they can be considered as minor, council, probably, because Sanghiti Sutta, for example, Sanghiti means reciting together. It's like first council is called Patama Sanghiti, right? The sutta itself is called Sanghiti Sutta because they are reciting together, and it is Sariputta, not the Buddha. Sariputta is telling these teachings, or pointing out these teachings to the students, and it seems that he's not just pointing them out, but he's asking everyone to keep them in mind, recite them together. So Mahakassapa took this decision of holding this first council is because we can see that all these senior venerables, they were not present. Before the Buddha's passing away, many of them died already, including Sariputta, Moggallana, and so on. So the most senior monk that was present after the Buddha's passing away was Mahakassapa and probably Anuruddha, right, who has been waiting for Mahakassapa to come and pay his last respect to the Buddha. And until his coming to power, Buddha was not cremated. So this is also, in a way, a kind of a sign that, Mahakassapa is the senior most monk among the Sangha at that time, probably in that particular area. And even Anuruddha and other monks, Ananda and other monks, they have been wanting him to lead the Sangha. So they have been waiting for him to come and pay his last respect. And then he would take over this, looking after this Sangha. So it was not entirely his decision. It seems that it was a decision made by Mahakassapa together with Anuruddha and other senior monks, right? So they decided to include Ananda as well, even though Ananda was not an Arahant at that time, right? So not just this utterance. So this is just presented as a kind of reasoning, but not only because of it. Otherwise, many people can say so many things with regard to the Buddha and his teaching. And just because, and he was not even a significant monk, right? Yes. One of the points that we have been discussing is about Matika, right? And the other is, especially in the traditional account, the Buddha teaching the Abhidhamma to the gods in the heaven, and after that coming down to this human world and teaching to Venerable Sariputta. But as long as the names of these 7 texts is concerned, it is said by the commentator that these names originated with Venerable Sariputta. Now, what is your opinion about it? Venerable Attasara?
It's not I have something to say, but not particularly on this subject. You see, when the Buddha preached the Abhidhamma in the realm of the Devas, he actually, I heard that there were 3 versions of it. the first version when was the first time when the Buddha taught it, preached it in the realm of the Devas, and it was the the long version. And when the Buddha taught it to Sariputta, he actually preached the short version of it. But when the Sariputta taught it to the 500, his 500 followers, he actually taught the middle version. So I have my question here is that which version do you think are we hearing right? Are we learning right now in the present time? And do you think the three versions would be the same? Also, from the last from the last class, I think that it is said that the Buddha actually taught the short version to Sariputta because he's very talented and bright and easy to understand things. So that's why the Buddha taught him the short version, and he understands everything. So do you think that currently we have to learn the long version to understand it, or would it be the middle version or the short version that we're currently looking at?
I see. So any remark or opinions with regard to Vanavatasara's question? Anyone would like to provide any answer? Anything to say? What about Kamyang? Oh, really? Sound is not big enough. So he has been saying that there is this idea that when the Buddha taught Abhidhamma to the gods, he taught a longer version, right? And when he came down to share this Abhidhamma teaching to Sariputta, he taught to him very briefly in a summary manner. And then when Sariputta taught his 500 students, he actually presented the middle version of it, right? A medium version of it.
Yes.
So the question is, which one is actually we are learning now? Which one actually, the version that is present now represent longer version, a shorter version, or medium version, right?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah. Now there are several ways of looking at it, I think. How do you decide shorter version, longer version, and medium version? Is it in terms of words, in terms of explanations, in terms of what? This is also a question, right? Now, if you just look at the suttas, you'd find so many suttas talking about Four Noble Truths or karma or Noble Eightfold Path or Paticca Samuppada, any topic. Sometimes they are presented, as a longer teaching, sometimes presented as a shorter teaching, right? And you'd find that it depends on the audience sometimes, and probably, I'm not sure, there are probably a sequel of several discourses that have been presented by the Buddha or his disciples. So sometimes if he already explained something on the previous day or last week, he's not going to repeat it again in the following week, right? And at other times you would find that something that has been said by the Buddha in a very brief manner, briefly spoken teaching, has been extended and explained by his disciples. So what it all suggests is that what needs to be understood is the centrality or essential message of the teaching. And then you can expand it or elaborate it, explain it from all different perspectives. Now, this is again connected to the preservation and transmission of teachings. Okay, so I would suggest, if you have this kind of question and doubt, I suggest that you go through some of the essays and writings with regard to the preservation and transmission of Buddha's teachings, okay, from the time of the Buddha until they are writing down, especially because it has been oral transmission, right? Now there are different theories. Primarily there are two theories. One is that the texts were fixed and monks have memorized them word by word, and then they have transmitted it to their students. So first of all, the texts have been fixed and they have been committed to, these monks have committed them to memory, word by word. Okay, and then the senior monks taught their students the teachings, and the students remembered them exactly, okay, as they were taught, and then they taught the same teaching to their students, and that is how they came down. So this is one understanding. The reasoning provided is that if a text is not committed to memory fully, then there is a problem of group recitation. Now, if we want to recite Karaniya Sutta, Mangala Sutta, or Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, if we do not remember this sutta, if all of us do not remember this sutta in exact terms, somebody remember one version, somebody else remember another version, then there is no possibility of reciting the sutta together. So you have to, and this group recitation has been one of the practice of remembering the teaching. Okay, so that is their logic. But then there is other group of scholar that says that what was fixed is matikas, is the topics. For example, in the Noble Eightfold Path, you have 8 path factors, right? In the Four Noble Truths, you have 4 factors. In the Satta Bojjhanga, you have seven factors. In the 4 Satipatthana, you have 4 factors, right? So these are the topics, list of topics called Matika. These were fixed, and all the disciples and the later disciples, focusing on this list of topics, provided their own explanations based on their understanding and realization. So that is how their argument is that if you take 2 suttas talking about 4 Satipatthana, there are differences in presentations. You see, so, and then there is a third group of scholars that says that some of the texts have been fixed and some of the texts have been developed in an improvisatory manner, in a way of improvising, focusing on the topics later on. What are the texts that have been fixed? For example, the Vinaya text, especially Patimokka and so on, because in the time of the Buddha, the Buddha made it, fun, how do you say, compulsory for the students to gather together and recite these Vinaya rules. So these texts have been fixed, probably, but as far as teachings are concerned, they were kept open. So there are all these theories. So I'm just talking about this very briefly. If you want, I can send you some of the articles by these modern scholars talking about, transmission and preservation of Buddha's teachings, because there are a lot of questions. For example, even when you talk about committing them into memory, there are different views, because in the time of the Buddha and even before that, in the Vedic tradition, there was this, practice that was present already. In the Vedic tradition, what is the practice? When, especially in the Brahmin community, when the Brahmin boys are very young, they are given this, training of memorizing the text. So they do not have to understand it. It is not, necessary for them to understand. They just have to memorize it. Later on, when they grow up, they can try to understand the text, right? So some scholars have been saying that, I think it is probably Professor Gombrich who said that, in Buddhism, they followed a kind of a similar practice of just memorizing. It doesn't matter if you understand or not. But Bhikkhu Analayo, for example, he says that it is actually not the case, for the students of the Buddha, because from the teaching, what we see is that when you memorize something, especially in the Buddhist Sangha, these monks, according to his view, they have been understanding the text and then memorizing it. Okay, so they have been doing it together, and they have not been memorizing it since their childhood. Once you enter into the Sangha, how do you enter into the Sangha? Not like now. In many traditional Buddhist countries, in a way, it is a rule that, at least once in your lifetime, you have to enter into the Sangha. There is this rule that is practiced, in the traditional Buddhist countries, in most of the traditional Buddhist countries. So it seems like you do not have a choice, right? And sometimes you do not know why you join the Sangha. It became a kind of a ceremonial practice, a ritualistic practice. But the idea is that if you look at many of the suttas, first of all, the Buddha gave the teaching. And then there are some people who become convinced by the teaching of the Buddha, and they want to enter into the Sangha because they want to have a better understanding of the teaching, or they want to follow this path so that they can, realize for themselves the true nature of existence. So the approach was different. So therefore, this idea that they have been memorizing it by understanding, right? So anyway, if you look at all these documents, you'll have a clearer understanding of how modern scholars think that teachings have been preserved and transmitted by these monks. Okay, now coming back to your point, I don't think, even though this discussion is probably present, there could be any discussion with regard to shorter version, longer version, and medium version, because if you look at the transmission process as well, in the time of redaction, copying the text on the manuscript, I think there have been a lot of changes, right? So therefore, we cannot exactly say that it is shorter version or longer version. To say that, you have to have all these versions to compare, right? So since we do not have that, what we can say is that if within a particular country, say for example in Thailand, if there are different versions of Abhidhamma literature available, right, we can say that in the Vibhanga, in this version, there are 50 pages more, right? Or a certain section is less. So only that is what you can currently find. And it is not as easy as it seems. Now, for example, we depend on this PTS edition, Polytext Society edition, that is mostly printed version, and this Chatta Sanghayana edition. If you just take these two editions together, any sutta or any commentarial text, you would find a lot of differences. Just take these two editions. but there are thousands of editions, not hundreds of editions. Now, recently means in last 10-15 years ago, I'm not sure exactly how many years ago, probably 20 years ago, this Dhammakaya Foundation took an initiative of doing a standard edition of Tipitaka, right? So they have gathered so many scholars from different countries, traditional scholars, modern scholars, you see, monks from Sri Lanka, from Myanmar, from Thailand, and scholars from Western countries, brought them together to do the research. And so far, they have not actually published a text. It is called pilot version, production of the text of just the first section of Digha Nikaya, Silakanda Vagga. Just the first section. And they're saying, if you look at the introduction, they say that they have collected over 1,000 different manuscripts of this text, and they have selected 150 best one. And this text represent an unification, or how do you say, unitary presentation of this 150 texts. They did not want to leave out. So they put them in the footnote or in the note everywhere, all the variants. So it is not an easy task. This is really a good point, I think, because normally what we think is that this text is fixed. This Tipitaka is fixed, right? This is the teaching that is preserved there. And then this is the translation. Let me study them and I get an understanding from that. But if you have this question that, okay, now I'm going to study this Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the question is the text preserved as it was taught? Or is there any other variants? But the essential message could be the same. But there are some variants that are really, really important. So we focus on the essential message. And if you are talking about the version, we have just Acharya Buddhaghosa's version. Okay, so not sure if it is longer or shorter or medium.
Which is on the so two of this commentary we mentioned about the Mahavana. So in one of these commentary we mentioned that the Mahavana is shown his mother one. So in another of this commentary to stuff, but we mentioned that it did not really show the smart.
Moggallana, a past life, yeah, there is this story. Right. Yeah. Different version. Right, true. Now, the idea is that these modern commentaries have been actually edited and rewritten by Acharya Buddhaghosa and his team based on Sihala-Atthakatha. They call Sihala-Atthakatha. So Sihala-Atthakathas represent older version of Atthakatha, but none of this is present because it is said that once the copying of the commentaries was completed, all these older commentaries have been burned. So I don't know what is the reason. One reason could be that so that there is no further confusion later on. All the people, should focus on this one particular commentary, and they have, this as authority, and they would have their understanding based on that. The other reason could be that this is what we have fixed, and we do not want people to look at the older commentaries and, create other commentaries, or if they want to copy or edit other version, we do not want that.
From the previous class, seems like the reason is that all the simply commentaries, since the majority of the people in the don't understand. So this is kind of ethical. So
Yeah.
since it is ethical, so it is very difficult to preserve the authentic.
You see, yes. I think that is a very good reasoning. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that is the reason. I mean, once it is fixed and it is approved by the Sangha and everyone, of course, I think they have the best of their intention to preserve the teaching, right? So, so that there, there is no further confusion based on the older commentaries, they burned it. Yeah, that could be the reason. Yeah, but now, how do you think these commentators coming up with their explanations? We talk about commentaries, sub-commentaries, right? And it is necessary to go through these commentaries and sub-commentaries to understand what is presented within the canonical text. But how do you think these masters or commentators came up with their commentaries? What could be the reason? And what do you think of their presentation? How did it develop? Was there any commentarial movement in the time of the Buddha or immediately after the Buddha's passing away?
No, I heard that there was not, and I heard some actually not someone the Sayadaw, the venerable Sayadaw from Pauno, who actually said that commentaries shouldn't actually be exist in studying Buddhism.
Right. There are some people who say that. There are some in Thailand, this monk is quite famous, Achan Buddhadasa. He also makes similar remark, right? That if you want to learn the teachings of the Buddha, why don't you just follow the teachings of the Buddha preserved in the canonical text? Why do you need a secondary literature? So you directly communicate with the teachings of the Buddha. You do not need a medium. That is his. So then some other people are saying that what Venerable Achan Buddhadasa is saying is right for him. It is applicable for him, but probably not for others, because not everyone can study a certain text and understand by themselves. Sometimes they need to go to school and learn it from their teacher. You see, so sometimes between the book and the student, you need a medium. Okay. But
they try to explain the definition of the terms and the paragraphs, but they do not mention like in what context that this paragraph or that this word is used for this.
Really?
Yeah.
No, normally they provide context. Normally they provide context. You see, what happens is that, okay, you can look at texts like history of Pali literature or basically text on Pali literature, where they provide descriptions about different set of literature, different type of literature, including commentarial literature, sub-commentarial literature, chronicles, grammar text, history text, and so on. So what you find in the commentary is that commentary is created so that you know, you can have better understanding of the teaching and so on. Context is one thing. Sometimes if you just read a sutta or a original text, it is very difficult to understand the context. Now I give you one example. And sometimes a particular teaching is presented from so many different directions. So they show you how you can approach to this topic from so many different point of view, right? And sometimes with some similes and examples. And sometimes you would find that they would provide you some examples of people who have been carrying out this particular practice and becoming successful. And sometimes some of the followers not being able to understand the teaching properly, failing in their practice. So all these examples are presented in the commentaries, and they are real examples. Why is that? Because they mention names of places and everything. Sometimes you would find names of places from India, ancient India, and sometimes from even Sri Lanka. Okay. So, okay, the example that I'm thinking of giving you is in this sutta, Dveda Vitakka Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. It is actually a kind of a autobiographical account of the Buddha. He is talking about how he practiced before becoming the Buddha, you know, and he's saying that he encountered this two set of thoughts, vitakka, kusala vitakka and akusala vitakka. Now, in the akusala vitakka, you have kama vitakka, vyapada vitakka, vihimsa vitakka. So normally, when you talk about kama vitakka, thoughts of sensuality, it is connected to 5 sense sphere, right? You have 5 indriyas, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the sensual thought that arise are always connected to these 5 sense organs. And they are connected to, for example, negative emotions such as greed, hatred, and so on, ignorance. But in this sutta, it just says that these negative thoughts arose in the mind of Siddhartha or Bodhisattva, and then how he overcame that. But it doesn't say what kind of kama vitakka. Only in the commentary, the commentator makes it clear. Now, in the commentary, I think the commentary explanation is really interesting and important to know, because we are talking about Bodhisattva here, who has been carrying out his practice for many lifetimes, who has been fulfilling his paramitas. Even in this life itself, for 6 years, he has been going through severe practices until his attainment of awakening, right? And this description particularly focuses on, as far as I can see, is just immediately before his attainment of awakening. That is the last day, right? Because the description shows that how he overcame these negative thoughts, developed positive thoughts, overcame this, he has gone beyond these positive thoughts and then developed one-pointedness of mind, and then gradually progressed in the jhanas, finally tevijja, and then attainment of bodhi. Okay, so in the commentary, when defining this kama vitakka, the commentator says that this kama vitakka of the bodhisattva that arose in him in his meditation should not be understood as it is generally understood in other texts. Okay, it is not connected to his 5 sense organs and his negative thoughts and everything. Kama vitakka here refers to that when he has been going through this practice, at some point, when he was sitting in front of this river, he was looking at the nature, and then he saw so many different types of deers, animals, butterflies, flowers, and so on. When he looked at the nature, the surrounding, he had a pleasing thought, slightly a pleasing thought, that is referred to as kama vitakka. You should not even have that thought. Now you see the difference between common peoples or other practitioners' kama vitakka and the kama vitakka of this person at this moment. It is just a pleasing thought, looking at the surrounding. That's all. Similarly, Vyapada vitakka should not be understood in the sense of harming any living beings or harming anyone, anything. Vyapada vitakka should be understood in the sense that when the Bodhisattva has been carrying out his practice, due to excessive heat, due to excessive coldness, he had a certain thought of discomfort. You should not have that. That is called Vyapada vitakka. Now, without commentarial understanding, commentarial explanation, how are you going to understand it? You have to be Achan Buddhadasa. See, this is really surprising for me as well. When I looked at this description, that they went so far as to explain this. And this is really interesting if you are really thinking about the Buddhist spiritual practice. Even this minute thought of feeling a little bit of discomfort is regarded as Vyapada vitakka. Negative thought that you need to overcome. So, yeah, interesting.
Is it not to engage with that thought, or just not to touch that thought? Like, for example, for one's for the level of the thinking going on, but if that kind of thought occurs to this mind.
Right. So it is understanding it as it is, not becoming, not being attached to the thought, not being repulsive to the thought. I think Bambo Koko wanted to say something, right? No? Nilay? Hmm? Yes, so that could be the reason that if the teaching is, even if don't talk about, you know, this presentation of teachings in terms of different pitaka, even if you talk about nikayas, Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, all are suttas, why not put them together and make one nikaya, for example, right? So the reasoning is that there are some longer discourses. It is better to separate them from the shorter ones, right? So that it is easier to remember or you know, look at them. Sometimes they are categorized in terms of subject matter, size, in terms of contents. You know, if you look at the Sanyutta Nikaya, Kosala Sanyutta, Vangisa Sanyutta, right? Yeah, so Satipatthana Sanyutta and so on. So when the subject matters are similar, they are put together. So it is clearly a later, organization, so that people can easily find out or understand teachings, easier to preserve, easier to remember. It is for that purpose. It is clearly understood. You see, now we have this, more than 2,500 years later, we have this, Buddhism, so-called Buddhism, different versions of Buddhism, different set of texts. But if you look at the life of the Buddha, Siddhartha, when he left home, when he, attained enlightenment, when he started to teach, in the beginning, of course, he did not want to teach even. So it was, you can see that it was only for his, for himself, he went out to realize the truth, because he was not satisfied with the worldly living. He wanted to know the truth. It is not that he decided first that, I need to become a Buddha and then I need to create Buddhism. That was not his intention. He just wanted to figure out the solution for the problems that he has been experiencing and he has been seeing around him. Once he found, first he realized that this is completely against the common human thinking, common human living. How I can communicate this to people? So he had a doubt for a moment. Are there people who are going to really understand it? Then later on, he came up with the idea that, let me try. And then if you look at this Dhammacakka Sutta or Mahavagga account, you would find that he started with the kind of people who have been following similar path of practice, who are struggling to become awakened, to know the truth. He did not start anywhere, with any people in the place. Okay, he started his teaching with, it is a kind of an experiment. And after hearing the first sutta, only Kondanya got Dhammacakku, that is, I think, explained to be Sotapatti. Right? It is only after the second sutta, Anatta Lakkana Sutta, that all the 5 monks became Arahant, and then he was 100% successful in communicating the teaching. Right? That is how it began. Now, if you look at these 2 suttas, most of the time I say that the entire Tipitaka, entire Buddha's teachings are built on these 2 suttas. These 2 suttas basically represent the basis. 4 Noble Truth, Noble Eightfold Path, and understanding of Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta in relation to 5 aggregates. All the remaining suttas can be regarded as commentaries or different explanations of these 2 suttas only. Right? So the main purpose of the Buddha was that communicating this teaching to the people so that they can be free from the dukkha, that is samsara, and obtain nibbana. Not to form Buddhism. That came later over the time, organization of the teachings, how you are supposed to communicate the teachings to people in different languages, different ways. At this moment in the intellectual community, especially in the world of scholars, it is just intellectual exercise. People would be talking about Nibbana without realizing it. People would be talking about Anatta with having an Atta. Right? So this is intellectual exercise. This is also important, right? Because sometimes you would find many scholars from the West, from the East, when they have been seriously doing these studies, they are so convinced with the teaching that they become a complete Buddhist practitioner. Probably they do not become monk or nun, but in a way, they are a better Buddhist than a monk and nun sometimes. You see? So this is also necessary. Why everyone, all the others remain silent? Venerable Nandamala. Venerable Nandamala, do you have anything to say? What about what about Venerable Aloka or Venerable Rajinda?
Yes, Bandi, I just something.
Okay.
Yes, as we know, the Buddha preached Abhidhamma in the heaven, the God walk. Yeah, when did the Buddha teach Abhidhamma and the human being walk? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you remember, we discussed it in our last class that according to the tradition, humans were not ready to understand. It was a higher teaching. Therefore, he taught it to the gods, including his mom in the heaven. And later on, he taught it to Sariputta so that Sariputta can teach to his disciples. And that is how we have these teachings. So this is one way of understanding it, that humans were not ready to understand. But then the question is, there were many humans becoming enlightened, becoming arahants and so on, right? So if you look at it from a different perspective, it could be that probably it was not necessary in the way we understand it now. I mean, not understanding Abhidhamma, but understanding the reasoning behind teaching the Abhidhamma.
Yes, thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, who else? Untan, you have to say something? You have something to say? No? Any question? Today we are supposed to discuss about the essay topics, right? I see, I just remember. So the essay topics, I have prepared some topics for all of you, and I will be distributing the topics. Yeah, so, but you have to choose the number. So in that case, I think I have to disconnect this. Otherwise, you see the topics. Okay, now let me open the list of topics. You choose a particular number, and then I write your name beside that number, and that becomes your topic. Wait. Venerable Coco chose number 1. I put number 1, and I put your name in number 1, okay. Yes. Eight. So Buntan chose number 8.
Teacher, how many numbers are there?
23.
Can I have number 2?
Number 2?
Yes.
Okay. Your name is Tasara.
Lagi 7, teacher.
Number 2. And then
Lagi 7.
Asin Medananda.
Yes.
What is your number?
7.
Sorry?
7. He was saying 7.
7?
Yes, teacher. Lagi 7 for me.
Okay. Lucky 7. Hey, wait. Medananda, let me find out number 7 for
Bandi, I will choose number 4.
Who is it? Who is this?
Rajinda.
Rajendra, number 4.
Yes. Yes, already.
Number who is the Vunu virtue?
How do you know? Hey, what about Kemar?
11 to 5 months.
Kema and Kamachara, both your name?
Yes. Full names Khemachara.
Hey, Barbara, what did you say? Funny. Niloy? Chandra Kishore? Number 3, right? Who else? Kavinanda? Maybe he's not there. Miss Kinzarlin. What number do you choose? I choose number 0. That's not very funny. Sumongkyo, number 12. Number 12. Number 13, Kinzarlin. Number 9, Shin Pandita. Later. Yeah, just. Yes. Hey, what about Shaun? 22. Apurva? 20.
Hello, Pandey. I'm in 21.
What is your name? CT.
Narendra, Pandey.
Linda. 21?
Yes.
Okay. Then some more people remaining. I don't know if everyone joined. In Nandamala, choose number 15. In the card, did you choose? Last one, I see. Kavinanda also did not choose, so maybe I don't know. Some of them are probably not present, so you have to choose first if you are present. I have just 23 topics. How can I give you? How can the number be 25? 15 is chosen already. 10. Oh, what is your name? 10 also chosen. Kavinanda chose 23. You don't want to choose? Oh, funny. Wait a moment. Now, as far as I can see, some of you have not chosen. For example, from the list, I see that four, 12, 5, 9, 13. Aloka, there is a monk called Aloka, right? What is your number?
Number 5, teacher.
Number 5 is chosen by one student here.
Yeah, it's me, teacher.
Sorry?
Aloka.
Another student choose number 5, right? Barbara, Miss Barbara here. You have to choose a different number. What are the numbers that are remaining now? 1 is chosen, 2, yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 14 is not chosen. Somebody can choose 14.
Teacher, I will.
So Kam Young choose 14. 15 is chosen. What about 16? 16, somebody can choose 16. Maybe Venerable Aloka choose 16. And then Pannasiri, you know Pannasiri? Who is Pannasiri? 17, 18, 19. Seventeen is for Indaka. Now I see that 2 persons did not choose. One is Miss Lee Guangchuan. The other is Venerable Pannasiri. Who is Pannasiri? Why like that? Computer is not responding. Hmm. So Pannasiri is online student. Oh, really? It's not joining. So his number would be 19 if he joins. And Miss Lee Wanzon, her number is 18. That is how we divide all the topics. Now, do you want me to show the topics or I just read out?
Could you please share the screen so that we can see it better?
I see. Okay, let me share my computer screen. Untan? Are you ready to see your topic? Okay. Can you see now? So number 1 is an understanding of the cognitive process in the Theravada Abhidhamma. This is a topic for Venerable Coco. And Venerable Attasara will be writing on this topic, an introduction to the conditional relations in the Theravada Abhidhamma. That is a discussion of Pachayas. Okay. Chandra Kishore will be writing on an understanding of Sankhata Dhamma and Asankhata Dhamma as discussed in the Theravada Abhidhamma. Whenever Rajindra's topic is the importance of studying the Abhidhamma teachings. So it would be a general focus on the importance of studying Abhidhamma. Barbara has to write on the origin and development of the Theravada Abhidhamma. The topic is, I think, okay for you, right? Niloy will be writing on the concept of Dhamma in the Theravada Abhidhamma. So you have to work on the Dhamma theory. Medhananda's topic is an exposition of the rootless consciousness in relation to the wholesome and unwholesome consciousness. Okay, I'll be sending the list to all of you. Buntan's topic is a presentation of the beautiful mental factors in the Theravada Abhidhamma. Beautiful mental factors, okay? This is a discussion of Sobana Chetasika. Whenever Pandita's topic is the concept of Bhavanga Chitta in the Theravada Abhidhamma. So this discussion will be focusing on the Bhavanga Chitta alone. Ms. Su Mong Ong, your topic is a brief presentation of the 4 great elements. So this is a discussion of Mahabhuta, Chattari Mahabhuta, okay? So whenever Kamachara's topic is the functioning of Kamma as discussed in the Theravada Abhidhamma. So you have to focus on the discussion of Kamma, how Kamma is understood in the Abhidhamma, okay? Sumang Kyo, your topic is an exposition of the Jhana Chittas according to the Theravada Abhidhamma. Miss Kang Zarlin, your topic is the application of the twofold method in the Abhidhamma teaching. The method of analysis and the method of synthesis. Okay. Kamyang, your topic is a survey of the Abhidhamma literature of the Theravada tradition. So you just talk about 7 books, and if you want to talk on the other type of Abhidhamma literature also, you can do that. So you have to have a general understanding of all these texts. Okay, what are their contents? What are their focus? What are their style of presentation? Yeah. Nandamala. Yeah, remember Nandamala? Your topic is a brief introduction to the functioning of Chitta and Chetasika according to the Theravada Abhidhamma. So here, whenever Nandamala has to do is to put Chitta and Chetasika together and understand their functioning. Okay, so it should not focus on separate presentation of different types of Chittas and different types of Chetasika, because you will not have enough, space to write all this. It would be a brief introduction. Venerable Aloka's topic is a discussion of the faculty of wisdom in the Theravada Abhidhamma. So the focus would be only on wisdom, how wisdom is explained, understood, presented in Theravada Abhidhamma. So your topic, in the cast topic, is the concept of Nibbana as discussed in the Theravada Abhidhamma. Okay. Miss Lee Kwan Chuan, Her topic is the importance of the Sammuti Satcha and the Paramatta Satcha in understanding the Abhidhamma teachings. Yeah, so you tell her, this topic. Pannaseri, Pannaseri's topic is an exposition of the Lokuttara Chittas according to the Theravada Abhidhamma. And Apurva's topic is a discussion of the dependent matter. Dependent matters are called Upada Rupa or Upadaya Rupa. So there are 4 primary matters: earth, air, water, fire, and derived matter or dependent matter. There are 24 in Theravada Abhidhamma. So you can look at the sections dealing with this Upada Rupa and then write your essay. Venerable Narinda's topic is an understanding of the material cluster, Rupa Kalapa. So there is an expression called Rupa Kalapa, material cluster, according to the Theravada Abhidhamma. Of course, everything is according to Theravada Abhidhamma only. And Shaun, your topic is time and space as understood in the Theravada Abhidhamma. So there is a chapter in Professor Y. Karanadasa's text. You can particularly look at that chapter and have an understanding. It could be a summary presentation of this chapter as well. Kavinanda's topic is a brief discussion of the Vipaka Chitta and the Kriya Chitta. So these are the 23 topics. Okay, now primary references, you just follow these 2 texts to write your essay. No need to look at other expositions or essays or books. So you have your reference text. For further reference, you can look at Visuddhi Magga and Padisambhida Magga, these 2 texts, for further reference. So this comes under extra text. Now instruction, not exceeding 2000 words. So it is going to be short essay. No need to write too much. Times New Roman font will be used. Font size 12. Spacing 1.5. Internet sources and plagiarism are strictly prohibited. Okay. So what is your opinion about your topic? Do you think that you have got the right topic for you?
No, certainly no. I actually chose 2 because I thought that maybe the topics would arrange in a manner that the whole Abhidhamma, the topics of in the Abhidhamma would be presented. So, but it's I got it totally wrong.
Yeah, no. Most of the topics in the Abhidhamma literature are, I think, covered here. There is a discussion of, for example, importance of Abhidhamma literature and, the 2 truths, Sammuti Satcha, Paramatta Satcha, in terms of Sankhata Dhamma, Asankhata Dhamma, Pachayas, Bhavanga, right? Dhamma theory, which is also a very important topic, and origin and development of Abhidhamma literature. And there are discussions on Chittas and Chaitasikas. For example, Sobana, Chaitasika, Bhavanga Chitta, Jhana Chitta, right? And also on some specific topic like how Kamma is discussed, Nibbana is discussed, Panya is discussed, right? Lokuttara Chitta. And also there are some topics on Rupas, and Mahabhuta and Upadaya Rupa, right? Even the idea of time and space. So I think more or less most of the topics?
Hello? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh yes, yes. I think your connection got you got disconnected for a while there, teacher.
Ah, I see. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading your papers once they are ready, and your presentation, especially because all of you will be talking on different topics this time. It would be interesting. Yeah. So now we are supposed to have a break for 10 minutes. Yeah. Now it is 10, right? So we meet at 10:10. Okay. See you after the break.
Yeah, teacher.
No, not necessary. Not necessary. For several reasons. One of the reason is that your essay is not going to be very long, right? So what it means is that you do not have the scope of copying also, putting a lot of information, right? So what you need to do is you need to just focus on these two texts and then work on your topic, make your own notes and present them systematically as far as possible in your own words, right? I think it is going to be a good training also because since you have your topic earlier, right, you have enough time to work on the topic, and once your draft is ready, you can look at it again and again if you want to improve on your writing. That is how you're supposed to do actually, because writing a longer essay is not necessary if you have to put a lot of information just by copying and so on. That is not a good practice. Last week also I mentioned that if you are able to write one good paragraph, you will be able to write one good essay. So as I said, first draft your essay and then try to read it as a reader, from the reader's perspective. Before somebody else give you comments, you have to be able to make critical remark on your essay. Okay. Some of you are completing your BA, so at least this much you should learn. Okay, let us continue with the lecture. We need to complete so many things. Yeah. So basically, we have been talking about these two approaches. One is traditional approach, and the other one is historical or more scholastic approach in understanding the origin and development of Abhidhamma literature, right? So what is the reason that if somebody gets disconnected from the Zoom, and then if they want to reconnect again, why do I have to admit them? Why automatically they are not admitted? Is there any particular? I think because then it is I have to every time I have to be careful. If somebody get disconnected, I need to connect them again. It takes time. Anyway, yeah, so in the traditional account, it is very clear that Buddha taught the Abhidhamma in heavenly abode and then came down and shared with Sariputta, and then that is how it continued. But there was just one question, that is because according to the commentarial exposition, all the names of the 7 texts originated with Sariputta, right? Therefore, there was one question, especially with regard to Katavattu, because as far as we know, Katavattu was a product of Venerable Moggaliputta Tisatera at the Third Council in response to the views presented by other Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools against so-called Vibhajyavada, which later on came to be known as Theravada. Moggaliputta Tisatera came up with this book where he presented the views of other Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools, and he provided his answer to all these questions and points that were raised against Theravada in understanding of Dharma, or not just Dharma, on various topics, including karma and nirvana and idea of person and so on. Okay. Why it is like that? Why? I don't know. What is the reason? Is it okay now? Okay. Yes. So, but there was one explanation with regard to this, is that the what do you call this basis for developing this Katavattu was presented by the Buddha himself, right? With the eight-facet inquiry. Okay, so there are 8 questions with regard to the theory of person. That was said to be the basis for the development of this text later on. Now, this is the translation of these questions with regard to Puggala. Now, this is from Dhammasangani Atthakatha. Okay, I think it is not necessary to read this, just look at the translation. There are 8 questions. The first question is the person known in the sense of a real and ultimate fact? Okay, so the answer is yes. Is the person known in the sense of a real and ultimate sense? Person, Puggala. Can the Puggala be known in the sense of real and ultimate sense? Now, person here does not mean 5 aggregates as a person. It is the personality. Okay, it is the existence of an independent entity within a person. Okay, that is the matter of discussion here. The second point is the person known in the same way as a real and ultimate fact is known? So now here you see the discussion is centered on ultimate existence or ultimate fact, because the discussion here is in terms of dharma. what is the ultimate truth of existence, ultimate truth of, you know, everything, fundamental basis of everything. So now, therefore, the question is focused on Puggala here, right? First of all, the question is if it represent a real and ultimate fact, okay? And secondly, the question is if it can be in any way similar to the real and ultimate fact, okay? So now here you would find that there is a slight change in understanding, in the sense that what is ultimate real and ultimate fact, can the existence of a person or understanding of a person be in any way related to or compared to that? Nay, that cannot be. So it is answered negatively. Acknowledge your refutation. Is the person not known in the sense of a real and ultimate fact? So in other words, is it different from the real and ultimate fact? No, it is not known. It cannot also be said. Then the following question is the person unknown in the same way as any real and ultimate fact is known? So can there be a different approach of knowing it? Is it completely unknown if you go by the process of knowing real and ultimate fact? So the way ultimate fact and real is known, the person can be known in the similar way or not. Okay, so that is the idea. Nay, it cannot be. Acknowledge your refutation. Is the person known everywhere in the sense of a real and ultimate fact? In any case you talk about person, can it be known in the sense of real and ultimate fact? Or is it unknown? Is it known always in the sense of a real and ultimate fact, or is it unknown? Is it known in everything in that sense, or is it unknown? Thus, showing the 8 aspects and their respective refutations, the table of contents has been laid down by the teacher for the text called Katavattu, which was composed in the Third Buddhist Council. So according to the commentator, these are the 8 aspects or 8 questions that can be considered as a basis for the development of Katavattu, and that is how the commentators relate the origin and development of Katavattu with the Buddha and also with Sariputta. When it says that the names of this text have been laid down by Sariputta. Yeah. Muggaliputta Tisatera expounded the book according to the contents laid down by the Buddha. Hence, it should be regarded as the word of the Buddha. Just as the Madhupindika Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, where Mahakaccana expounds teachings based on the topic given by the Buddha. After the talk, he asks the monks to go to the Buddha to confirm his talk. They go to the Buddha and ask about the teaching. Buddha approves the teachings. Hence, it is regarded as Buddha Vachana. Okay, so you can look at the Madhupindika Sutta, and not just the Madhupindika Sutta, it's just brought up as an example. In many suttas, you would find that when the Buddha was giving teaching, sometimes for some reason, sometimes probably he's tired and he's feeling, he needs to take rest. So he asked a certain student to take over. Okay, and his student continues to give the teaching. At the end of the teaching, sometimes the Buddha approves the teaching, saying that if it was me who was providing the teaching, it would be exactly the same. So that way he actually approves the teaching that was given by his student. He confirms that the teaching is right. There is nothing wrong. But we can easily understand that it could be, as we have been saying, in a way of improvising the teaching. The topics remain the same. The essence remain the same. The wording, explanation, examples may be different, right? So based on the topics, based on the teaching, the essential message, somebody provides further explanation. That is how this Kathavattu or some of the Abhidhamma text, or probably all the Abhidhamma text, should be understood as Buddha Vachana, words of the Buddha. Not in the sense that they represent every single word to be spoken by the Buddha, but they contain essential message that is conveyed by the Buddha. Similarly, the teachings expounded by Ananda. Thus have I heard. So in a way it becomes secondary, because we have been hearing the words from the mouth of Ananda, not from the mouth of the Buddha, as he remembers, as he present. Right? I heard the Buddha said this. It is like that, right? So the 7 books of Abhidhamma could in the same way be regarded as Buddha Vachana. Now we come to discuss the historical account. In the beginning, you mentioned part of it, right? In some suttas, in terms of presentation and method, there are some similarities based on which some of the modern scholars come to the conclusion that the metrics or the topics or the essential basis was present within the sutta and some of the Vinaya text probably, and based on that the Abhidhamma literature developed. That is the fundamental idea. Abhidhamma developed from the teachings in the sutta and also Vinaya. That is a general understanding by the modern scholars as far as the origin and development of Abhidhamma is concerned. The term Abhidhamma is found in suttas together with the term Abhivinaya to mean not Abhidhamma Pitaka as such, but to mean about the Dhamma or the profound Dhamma of the Buddha. Now, when this expression Abhidhamma is used in the suttas or even Abhivinaya, they do not really represent that there is a separate collection called Abhidhamma Pitaka or Vinaya Pitaka and so on, which is completely separate and different and higher than the original Dhamma and Vinaya. So these expressions just mean that Abhi in the sense of relating to, with regard to, about. Okay, so about the Dhamma, about the Vinaya. Or in terms of profundity of Dhamma and Vinaya. A number of suttas might have contributed to the development of Abhidhamma. Okay, now, first of all, they make a general statement that based on suttas and Vinayas, Abhidhamma developed. Secondly, now they go into specific text, trying to find out the similarity in terms of presentation and contents and everything. Suttas featuring Abhidhamma Katha. Mahagosinga Sutta, for example, is taken as an example for this Abhidhamma Katha. Buddha Gosa in Atasalini links Dhamma Katika with Abhidhammika. So if you look at the Mahagosinga Sutta, so it was taken place. It took place in forest in a place called Mahagosinga. The sutta is very nice. In that sutta, you find this description of all these great disciples of the Buddha, including Sariputta Thera, Moggallana Thera, Ananda, Mahakachana, I don't know, Punnamantani Putta, Mahakassapa, and so on. all these great disciples decide to visit the Buddha. It was a full moon night in the forest. It seems like, they're having a very beautiful, pleasant environment. And after coming out of meditation, all these great Mahatheras, they wanted to visit the Buddha and have a Dhamma discussion with the Buddha. Okay, so all these monks gather together, and then the Buddha asked them questions, and then they provide their own understanding of the Dhamma in different ways, right? But I think, the sutta seems to be interesting, because in that sutta you'd find that it is not Sariputta who is linked with Abhidhamma there. I think it is Moggallana probably who is linked with Abhidhamma. So what it also suggests is that when we say that, Abhidhamma should be connected to Sariputta alone, probably because he was supreme in terms of wisdom after the Buddha among his disciples, right? But it does not mean that other great disciples who are lacking wisdom, right? So more or less, most of these great disciples having deeper understanding of truth, which could be represented as Abhidhammic understanding, probably, because we are talking about Abhidhamma here. You may look at the Mahagosinga Sutta for a better understanding. Suttas featuring Vedalla. Vedalla represent a kind of a dialectical approach to the discussion. Okay, so there are questions, there are answers. Okay, based on the answer, you have a following question, and then again there are answers provided to the questions that are raised. Particularly, you can look at Mahavedalla Sutta, Chula Vedalla Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. The scope may be broader than that in the Abhidhamma Katha. The discussion is between the Buddha and his fourfold disciples or among the disciples. So sometimes the discussion takes place between the Buddha and his disciples, sometimes just among the disciples. Right? These are also representative of the idea that the Buddha told his disciples that either you engage in the Dhamma discussion or you carry on your practice in silence. Right? So Dhamma discussion. Now, if you consider this fact, this idea that these monks, including the Buddha, they are enlightened beings, right? They have all reached their attainment. They are all considered as arahants, teachers. What is the reason for them to be engaged in Dhamma discussion? So these two things they do: either they are engaged in their practice in meditation, right? Or they engage in Dhamma discussion. So what happens is that when you are engaged in discussions, that is why actually discussion is very, very important. Discussion and sharing is very important. I always encourage you to do that. Whatever you remember, whatever you think about, you can share in your class, so that other people also come to know, and if they have different understanding, they can also share and ask questions. What happens is that things become clearer. That is one thing with regard to that, and it is part of their practice. Secondly, those people who are present during the dialogue, during the discussion, it is good for them as well. They get to know a certain teaching that is probably not clear to them previously. Vedalla Katha is equated with Abhidhamma Katha. So suttas that have Abhidhamma Katha and suttas that have Vedalla type of discussion are said to be predecessor for Theravada Abhidhamma to be developed. Suttas featuring Vibhanga. Vibhanga, the term itself means exposition or analysis. And you have a text named Vibhanga already, right? In the Abhidhamma literature. Now, for this, particularly, you can look at Vibhanga Vagga of Majjhima Nikaya, where you have suttas like Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, Uddesa Vibhanga Sutta, Satcha Vibhanga Sutta, and so on. Suttas featuring Matika or metrics or topics. For example, Kinti Sutta, Samagama Sutta, Pasadika Sutta, Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Dasuttara Sutta, Sangiti Sutta. These are examples of the suttas of this nature that contain list of topics that could be functioning as a basis for the development of Abhidhamma. Patisambhida Magga is a text belonging to Kuddaka Nikaya, right? But it is said that this Patisambhida Magga developed later, and when you look at the contents of the Patisambhida Magga and the presentation style of the Patisambhida Magga, you would find similarity with that of Abhidhamma text. So therefore, some people say that this Patisambhida Magga could be taken as a kind of preliminary step, before the full-fledged development of Abhidhamma literature. But this text is counted as a text belonging to Sutta Pitaka, right? Do you know who is this monk? No. No. Jnana Moli. Jnana Moli. So Jnana Moli is the person who translated this Patisambhida Magga. He has actually done great job in studying and translating some of the most difficult texts. First of all, he translated texts like Visuddhimagga. The Visuddhimagga translation that is available now, that everyone reads and everyone cites, that is his translation. Okay. Patisambhida Magga is one of the other texts. Netipakarana is also translated by him. And I think most of the texts have been published after he passed away, because he died quite young. So he just lived as a monastic just for 10 or 11 years only, since his becoming a monk until his passing away. And he has been focusing on his studies and practices, and it is said that he has been actually doing the translation just for his own understanding only, not with the purpose of publishing. Therefore, he did not publish any text. I think most of the texts have been published only after his passing away, because all his manuscripts have been discovered, and then later on somebody edited and sent them to publication center and published. But many of the scholars says that among the translations on this text, this translation seems to be better. His understanding seems to be very good. So I put a picture and picture of this monk, and also the picture of this Patisambhida Magga, because this text was translated by him, and so that as a student of Buddhism, we get some inspiration. We get inspired by his dedication and work. Now, this is a remark made by Professor Warder, A.K. Warder. This is A.K. Warder. He's a Canadian Buddhist scholar who passed away a long time back. He has also written quite a few books, and he worked in the Polytech Society as well for some times. Now, this is his remark with regard to Patisambhida Magga and Abhidhamma literature. So he says that the Patisambhida Magga has been described as an attempt to systematize the Abhidhamma and thus as a possible precursor to the Visuddhi Magga. So he even says that it is prior to Visuddhi Magga. The text's systematic approach and the presence of a Matika summarizing the contents of the first section are both features suggestive of the Abhidhamma, but it also includes some features of the Sutta Pitaka, including repeated invocation of the standard Sutta opening, Evang me Sutang, thus have I heard. Its content and aspects of its composition overlap significantly with the Vibhanga. So in terms of style and content, it says that a lot of things that are presented in Visuddhi Magga, in Patisambhida Magga can be found in Vibhanga as well. And Acquarda suggested that at some stage in its development, it may have been classified as an Abhidhamma text. So according to him, at some stage of categorization of text, it might have been put into the category of Abhidhamma by some, probably, but later on decided to put it into the Sutta collection. That is his understanding. Noah Ronkin is another scholar who suggests that the Patisambhida Magga likely dates from the era of Abhidhamma's formation and represents a parallel development of the interpretive traditions reflected by the Vibhanga and Dhamma Sangani. Okay, so according to Noah Ronkin, Patisambhida Magga develops side by side with Abhidhamma literature, and in terms of style of presentation and so on, it comes closer to Vibhanga and Dhamma Sangani. Fundamental topics of discussion in Abhidhamma. What kind of topics do you find? Now, when you talk about, when you have this question, for example, is Abhidhamma, word of Buddha Vachana? Can Abhidhamma be regarded as word of Buddha and so on? What are the topics of discussion? What are the topics of fundamental topics of discussion in the suttas, Sutta Pitakas and Vinaya Pitaka? What are the topics of discussion in the Abhidhamma Pitaka? Earlier, we have been talking about the message of the Buddha, essential teaching of the Buddha, and the discussions around them, right? Individual and its experience. That is the fundamental topic of discussion. Individual and its experience, right? Because Buddhism generally focus on one's own existence, right? And how do you connect yourself to the external worlds? In other words, who are you? Realizing who are you, understanding who you are, right? And what are your experiences about life? How you experience the world. So it is about you and your connection to the world. Because everyone is different, everyone sees things from his or her own perspective. So here the discussion is about phenomenal world. You have your being, your indriyas, and how your indriyas function with the external objects. And this individuality is presented in terms of nama and rupa, right? Mind and matter, mentality and physicality. In terms of 5 aggregates, rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, there you can find that rupa is presented as 1 and the other 4 is a division of nama, right? Mentality is presented in terms of 4, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. 12 ayatanas. In the presentation of 12 ayatanas, there are 6 indriyas and then 6 objects for the indriyas. corresponding objects. So you have eye, and then you have form, rupa. Ear, sound. Nose, smell. Tongue, taste. Body, touch. Mind, thoughts. 18 dhatus. In the presentation of 18 dhatus, together with 12 ayatanas, you have 6 vijnanas connected to 6 indriyas. These things are presented in the Abhidhamma literature in terms of 4 Paramatta Dhammas: Chitta, Cetasika, Rupa, and Nibbana. Out of these 4 Paramatta Dhammas, 3 come under Sankata classification, and 1 in the categorization of Asankata. So Chitta, Cetasika, Rupa come under the classification of Sankata Dhamma, and Nibbana is an Asankata Dhamma. The psychoethical classification of the Dhammas as Kusala, as Akusala, as Abhyakata, Vipaka, and as Abhyakata Kiriya. So this is how, these things are presented. Psychoethical means psychological. Ethical means in terms of good and bad. So in Buddhism, there is always this discussion of Kusala and Akusala, right? Wholesome and unwholesome. So therefore it is called ethical. Ethics is very important in Buddhist study and practice. And it is psychological, because it is always intention that is defined as kamma. Your intention is very, very important. If it is pure or impure, if it is led by unwholesome roots or wholesome roots, if it is led by ignorance or wisdom. The classification of Dhammas as Chittas, Cetasikas, and also Rupa Dhammas in terms of Bhumi or Avachara. So you have these Dhammas, right? But do they belong to Kama Avachara, the sphere of sensuality, or the sphere of form, Rupa Avachara, or Arupa Avachara, sphere of formless, or Paramatta? So there are Kamavachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, and Paramatta, Kusala, Akusala, Vipaka, and Kiriya Dhamma, right? And these are Chitta and Cetasika. Among other topics that are discussed within the Abhidhamma literature are path factors, Magga, Satcha, Bojjhanga, Appamana, Indriya, Bala, Iddhipada, Satipatthana, Sammapadana, and so on. Do you think you would find discussions on these topics within Sutta Pitaka as well? Maybe the presentation is different, right? But the topics are the same. The subject matters of the 7 books in summary. Dhamma Sangani, you have, this is first of the 7 books. You have 4 divisions in this book, 4 important chapters. First chapter presents classification of consciousness, that is Chitta. And then second chapter discuss about Rupa. Third chapter represents a kind of a summary. And the 4th chapter represent explanatory aspect of what is discussed previously. This is very briefly the summary of all this text. I think we do not have sufficient time to go through all this. I'll quickly go through them probably later on. Or you can, it is a good idea to look at the introduction section of the Abhidhamma Sangaha. Yeah, this would be good. You'd have a good understanding of it. From next class onwards, if it is possible, I try to start with the discussion of Dhamma theory. Probably in the second half. In the first half, we will have discussion and also the remaining presentation of this lecture. In the meantime, I would ask all of you to look at the introduction section of this text. You all have this text, right? Please look at the introduction section. It is not very long. Read it carefully and make some notes. If it is possible, make about 1-page notes and send to me. When you write your notes, you do not have to be formal. You do not have to put citation and references, everything. It can be informal writing. Just some of the points. You can even summarize, with numbers also. Point number 1, point number 2, 3, 4. That way also it would be good for you to keep track of what you are understanding and you want to tell others. Yeah, so when you are making these notes and if you are sending it to me, don't forget to write your name and student ID, at least, so that I can know. If you send me ID card, then I have to find out your ID number and write your name. But that is only if you forget your name. You write your ID number. I see. Okay, so that is all for today's lecture. If you have any further inquiry or question, you can raise it now. No, you just for the next, you just read introduction section of this book, not this one, because do you want to read? You can read if you like. No problem.
So what they say about the internet source is prohibited, so it cannot reuse the.
For your understanding, you can go through them, but don't take anything from there because you already have sufficient information here. You do not need from anywhere else. There is word limitation. It is not very big. Also, you have time constraint. You do not have very long time to do research and write a big essay. You need to write other essays also. So these 2 books would be I think sufficient. Or you want more books? I can provide you more books also, more references. Any question from Venerable Pasara or Asin Kamar or Medananda?
My question is that, teacher, do you think that if we only sorry, I have something here. Wait a moment, please. If we only read the related sections in the books for our topics, would that be enough?
Sorry?
I mean, for the essay, for the presentation and essay, if we only read the parts that are related to our topics, would that be enough?
That would be enough because we are going to have other discussions within the classes. But of course, if you want to read other parts of the book also, it's okay. for your own understanding, right? You have time, you can, of course, read through the text, different chapters of the text, no problem at all.
Well, I was wondering if it would be okay if we just go for the parts that are related to topics, because then we would be missing out all the basics that are in the first few parts of the book. So yeah,
that's true. That is true.
About that.
Yeah, that is true. So that is true. That is why I said that we will be having discussions in the class systematically. I think that would help you. But again, when you have time, you can just look at the previous section so that you can understand your section well.
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Or even I think among yourself, if somebody has a better understanding of Theravada Abhidhamma, you can have some discussions, you see. So it would be helpful. Any other question or remark? Or everyone is hungry now? Do you want to say anything? What about Kamyang? You are taking time. I thought you have something to say. And finally you say that you have nothing to say. Okay. What about Shaun? Kuntan? How many what? Just one page. You want to write more? Okay. Okay, then we end our class here today. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, teacher. See you next week.
See you next week.